The Vancouver Canucks continue to fight for their playoff lives, but now they're going to have to overcome some key injuries as well. Trevor Beggs of Locked On Canucks is here to talk about that and what it'll take to get to the Stanley Cup playoffs next on today's Locked On NHL podcast.
You're Locked On NHL, your daily podcast on the National Hockey League. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Gil Martin here, and welcome everybody to the Monday edition of the Locked On NHL podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I want to thank everyone who makes Locked On NHL your first listen every day. Don't forget to subscribe on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts so you get new episodes as soon as they drop. It is great to welcome back to the show the co-host of Locked On Canucks, Trevor Beggs. And Trevor, this has been quite a roller coaster ride of a season for the Vancouver Canucks, and now some key injuries taking place over the weekend. What is the latest that you've heard about these injuries and whether or not the Canucks will have a full team ready in their next game?
Yeah, you know what, Gil? I've said it before on this show, but it's never a dull moment covering the Vancouver Canucks, for better or for worse. And lots of good times last year. Not so many good times this year, but lo and behold, still find themselves in the thick of a playoff race. But, you know, those hopes of making the playoffs took a serious dent against the New York Rangers in probably one of the most crushing losses of the season on a number of fronts. I mean, this Canucks team has struggled to shoot the puck. They've struggled to take over games for most of the season. And it was different in New York on Saturday morning. I mean, they absolutely gave the Rangers their lunch, except they gave up 5 goals on 12 shots and ended up losing the game. And then, of course, as you're alluding to, Elias Pettersson and Nils Höglander both leave the game. Really tough losses for the Vancouver Canucks. If they miss any time, they did miss practice on Sunday prior to their game against the New Jersey Devils, but neither player has been ruled out yet. There's also been no update given on their injuries. It looked like Pettersson might have been favoring a wrist, but still no update given on their injuries. But, you know, of late for the Vancouver Canucks, they'd formed a new top line a couple of games ago of Nils Höglander, Brock Besser, and Elias Pettersson. And Kyle and I said on the show, and I think most NHL fans know it was like 6 years ago now, which seems crazy. But, you know, Pettersson and Besser looked like they were going to be one of the next dangerous forward duos in the NHL. And I mean, in Pettersson's rookie season, you know, at the halfway point of the year, he's over a point a game. Brock Besser almost half goal a game. And you're thinking, man, oh man, these guys are going to terrorize the league for years to come. And that sort of happened for stretches, but they haven't really done it together, at least not in a big stretch of time now, really ever since the Lotto Line season back in 2019-20. So they had a really good stretch together. Brock Besser now is up to 5 goals in 3 games. Pettersson had a 6-game point streak prior to the game against the New York Rangers when he only played 750 of ice time. And Nils Höglander is looking one of the best forwards on this team for about a month now, and what had been a very disappointing season for him up to date. So those 3 players had come together, looked really solid on the top line, controlling play, getting chances. And now for the Canucks to be missing 2 guys from that line, not to mention they're already missing Philip Hedl, not to mention they already traded away JT Miller, not to mention one of the lowest scoring teams in the NHL. Yeah, it's a tough spot for the Vancouver Canucks right now, and especially a team that's fighting for their playoff lives.
What was it like going up against JT Miller in New York over the weekend?
Yeah, I think there was some mixed emotions for sure. You know, the way I've looked at that trade is that unemotionally, it's a loss, right? You trade away a guy JT Miller's stature, you don't win a trade like that. And to see what he's doing in New York, and now things kind of flipped recently, but he's obviously having some success there. You know, I don't know if there's a lot of bad blood among Canucks fans. He was pretty beloved in this market, although there's a lot of Team Miller versus Team Petey. But look, it hurt in a game where the Canucks dominated, deserved to win, that JT Miller picks up, you know, a very crucial primary assist and then gets the empty net goal as well. So that part of it hurt. I mean, it could have been different. I think if Pettersson was in the game, he picked off a JT Miller pass and set up a great chance in the second period there. So, you know, I think at this point as a Canucks fan, it's, you know, JT, all the best in New York. As Canuck fans, they also want to see the New York Rangers probably finish as, you know, outside of the bottom 13, because if that becomes an unprotected first in 2026, which we traded away for Marcus Pettersson to Pittsburgh, that one's going to sting for Canucks fans heading into next season. So I think you at least want to see the Rangers finish 14th. So hopefully JT Miller can get them there.
Yeah, well, we'll see. Now, this team is on a critical road trip right now this year. Uh, how important is it to pick up these points? I mean, there's no margin for error anymore.
Yeah, there's really not, Gil. And you look at the Canucks playoff odds. I mean, the Athletic has been probably the most bullish on the Canucks playoff odds, and now they're down to 27%, trailing both the Calgary Flames at 28% and the St. Louis Blues at 34%. And Utah is behind the Canucks, but actually have thought for a while that Utah might actually have the best chance of making the playoffs. I think they got a pretty deep forward group, a good defense, good goaltending. They're just a young team that makes mistakes, but they are the most talented team of the four, in my opinion. But yeah, from the Canucks perspective, I mean, you look at their schedule coming up, and there aren't many games here that you can afford to lose, right? And Gil, I know your Islanders are in the same position, but the Canucks came into this road trip facing a couple of desperate teams, the St. Louis Blues, who they lost to in overtime. Pretty lucky to steal a point with Brock Besser's goal with 3 seconds left in that one. Then they lose to the Rangers. They got the Devils coming up, who are in a playoff spot, but trying to prove that they're a good team with missing 2 top defensemen and Jack Hughes. Of course, the Islanders, the Blue Jackets, both desperate teams fighting for their playoff lives. And then you end the road trip with the Winnipeg Jets. So it doesn't get easier for the Canucks. They got the Kraken and the Ducks and the Sharks still on the schedule. That's good news. The bad news is 5 of their last 6 games are against the Golden Knights twice, the Dallas Stars, the Minnesota Wild, and the Colorado Avalanche. So, I mean, you're looking at a team right now that has 77 points overall, if I'm not mistaken. I don't have the standings in front of me, but they can only afford to lose maybe 3 or 4 more games over the next 13. So there is very zero margin for error. And you look at the schedule ahead here on this road trip, the Devils, Islanders, and Jackets. After losing 2 on this road trip, do you argue that they have to win their next 3 games? I mean, with the way the Blues are playing, and the Blues have the easiest schedule remaining as well. Yeah, the Canucks can't really afford to lose any more games here. And I mean, they're in pretty big trouble if Elias Pettersson and Nils Höglander miss time here.
Has the trade of JT Miller solved some of the chemistry issues this team appeared to be having earlier this season?
Yeah, I think it has. It's not like I put it this way to our listeners here on Locked On Canucks. I think of late you've noticed it. My theory has been that when you have an alpha male like JT Miller in your locker room, and I think this is the same for everyone who's played sports who can relate to this. When you have an alpha male in your locker room, and then you have younger guys who are kind of in their shadow a little bit, I think it takes some time when you remove that alpha male for the other young guys to step up. And I think with the Vancouver Canucks, as soon as JT Miller was traded, Brock Besser and Elias Pettersson were goddamn near invisible. You look at the 15 games since the trade. Brock Besser had 1 primary assist. Elias Pettersson at even strength, I should say. Elias Pettersson had, I think, 2 primary assists at even strength. So, they had a combined 3 even strength points in 30 games together. Like, they were just invisible out there for the Vancouver Canucks. But as I mentioned, the tides kind of turned over the last 6-7 games. And I think they have started to emerge as maybe they're coming out of JT Miller's shadow. I'm not quite sure. But they have looked a lot better over the last 6-7 games. And then just maybe it took some time for JT Miller not to be there. Obviously, we're past the trade deadline as well. And there's some drama there with Brock Besser and to a lesser extent, Elias Pettersson. So, I mean, I want to say yes, but at the same time, Rick Tocchet has been juggling lines like crazy. Not much has worked, and he kind of stumbled into Höglander, Besser, and Pettersson, which started to work for a few games, and now both guys might be injured. And that's life as a Canucks fan, buddy.
What is the key to getting into the playoffs? What does this team really need to do to finish strong and extend their season?
Yeah, I mean, it's funny, on the show on Friday, Kyle and I did a little debate about this, and who is the most important player for the Canucks playoff push? He said Quinn Hughes, which obviously makes a lot of sense. Quinn Hughes is having an MVP-like season, and I said Elias Pettersson. Now Pettersson's gone. This team is really going to have to dig deep and find some offense. I mean, I am not very bullish on this team. If they're missing Pettersson and Filipino for an extended period of time, that this team's going to be able to make the playoffs. So, look, I think the keys to make the playoffs are, and with this, we haven't mentioned this name yet, but it's Thatcher Demko coming back. So Thatcher Demko he did back up against the St. Louis Blues on Thursday. Artur Shilov's backed up on Saturday. Maybe it's because it's his birthday. I'm not quite sure. But Demko is pretty close to returning. He hasn't been in the lineup since February the 8th, I believe. So it's been some time for Thatcher Demko. And, I'm not sure if you're going to get vintage Demko coming back, but he's got to come in and at least be average, because I think Kevin Lankin has started to show some signs of fatigue. And, one of the best trait about the Canucks this season has been their ability to defend is damn near well the best in the league. Their penalty kill has been the best in the league since January 1st. And I think they give their goaltenders a fighting chance, but Kevin Lankin can't be overplayed. They don't trust Artur Shilov. So I'm going to say that it's a Demko return and the Canucks just playing boring, grinded out 2-1 hockey. I think that's their path to making it. And then they're going to have to get a bit of luck to get there as well, with teams like the Blues kind of maybe dropping some games against teams they shouldn't lose to.
All right. Well, I know that you and your co-host will have your finger on the pulse every step of the way. Trevor, why don't you tell our viewers and our listeners where they could find the podcast and where they could find you both on social media?
All right. Yeah, Gil, good to be on as always. You can find me on Twitter/X at TrevBeggs. You can follow Locked On Canucks on Twitter. You can find us on YouTube, wherever you listen to podcasts. And I hear that there's some TikTok clips. We have to follow my co-host for that, Kyle Bowen, BHAWAN.
All right, Trevor, thank you so much. Today's episode is brought to you by Monarch Money. Ever check your bank account and wonder, where did all my money go? Between dining out, online shopping, and entertainment, it's easy to lose track. That's where Monarch Money comes in, your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place, so you can stop just managing your money and start building wealth. When I started using Monarch, I realized just how much I was spending on food delivery. Now I budget smarter and save more. And instead of juggling multiple apps, you could use Monarch to check your finances, track spending, and even plan long-term goals. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNHL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNHL for half off your first year.